Okay, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Melody Rae. Is that your actual last name, or is that your
No.
Facebook name?
That's my Facebook name, but my middle name is Rae.
Oh, okay.
My last name is Petrus.
Petrus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Czechoslovakian.
Polska over here, so Wodarcyk.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We don't mind this weather. This is the weather of our people. So
Cool.
right before we got started here, we were actually talking about YouTube and starting a YouTube channel. I figured we just pick up that conversation where we left off, and you were saying that
Yeah.
you have an interest in starting maybe a YouTube channel about music and gaming.
Yeah. Really interested in this. This is something I've actually thought about for a couple years, but I've only ever focused on just writing music and doing that kind of thing. So the channel will probably be based around the name Miss Monday. I'll just be Miss Monday. Maybe I'll add something else, but it'll be gaming. It'll be like a gaming channel and music channel where I invite people on to just play music and talk a little bit. It won't be like long interviews or anything.
Just a little.
It'll be cool.
Little insight into the band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I should mention that I know Melody from the band Mange, who I was a huge fan of, and like a lot of people, disappointed when the band broke up, and we ran into each other last weekend. Was it? Yeah, the weekend before last, and we had a long conversation about music, which is something that I did with my life for a long time, and realized that we were kind of kindred spirits. And I think back in the Mange days, I approached you at the Third Fridays about coming on the podcast, but I think we talked for a minute, and that was about all that we ever had a chance to talk.
Yeah. It was great to talk with you again about all that.
And it was funny that even though we're way apart in age, that we had similar feelings about being a musician and what it means to be in a band. And I think one of the things that you talked about was that. And I think it's the cool thing for musicians to say it's about the music, dude, and which it is. And but there's so many other things that we talked about. The being in a band is that's great about, I guess, being in a band.
Yeah, I would say that Mange was an amazing experience. I was very sad to let it go, and we had reasons for splitting up, but it just kind of fulfilled something in me, because it was the music that I really loved playing, and I felt connected with the audience whenever they would express that they loved it too. And it was the only time I ever felt anything like that, because I was also in another band called Rivers, and that was cool too, but that was before Mange, and Mange was just completely different from that.
It's like the next level, right?
Yeah.
Because I know I had been in a bunch of different bands, but then when you get in that one band that really just kind of everything connects, and you're like, oh, this is what it's really about, where you everybody is on the same page, and the audience is responding, and there's just something about it that there's no other feeling like it in the world.
No, there really isn't. Sometimes it can be hard, because sometimes there might have been some dark times when I was in Mange where I kind of lost that sense of companionship, like with the audience, because not every show is the best show, and you kind of think that people are just there to be there. But most of all, it was probably the best experience. Well, and
it's like the best of times and the worst of the times, I guess, because it is a very emotional thing. You really put your heart into it. So if you have a great feeling, you also have the potential to be really hurt. Like I know what you mean. I've definitely played shows before where we'd be really excited about it, and you look around the room and you realize that people are just there because they want to be out.
Yeah.
And they're having conversations, and
it's not always like that, and it's not everybody.
Yeah.
But
and I think those shows
you can feel that sometimes, but it's good. I learned not to let it bother you. Think about that, and that's not why you're there. You're not playing for those people. You're playing for the people who want to be there.
You play for the people that want to be there, and sometimes that's just one of those things where when you take the whole thing and you look back on it, you realize that those are the kind of the shows that you can laugh about, especially when you go on and you have good shows where people are really locked in and loving what you're doing, and you think back, remember that it's after amount of time, it's just a remember when we were there and nobody was watching and nobody was really paying attention, and I think that all makes you appreciate it all the more when people do really dig what you're doing.
Sometimes I do notice though, because the scene can be different in different places and among different kind of groups. Sometimes I think that not all those people who look like they don't want to be there actually don't want to be there. There's a place called City Grows in Pittsburgh that we played at, and everybody who went there, it was there for the music and stuff, but it's kind of a cool thing to just stand there and look appreciative. It's not like no one wants to dance. It's just you just stand there and you focus really hard on what's being played. The whole audience does that, and it's just and it makes you so anxious. It would make me so anxious because everyone's just standing there staring,
intently,
studying. If they really like you, sometimes they'll just stand there and stare at you and try to figure you out. It's just that was hard sometimes, but
well, and you will also get I guess if there's a really active music scene, or you'll get the thing where there's a lot of people that are also musicians. They'll stand in the audience, go, yeah, they're not as good as me.
Also that
they want to, you got
to tell how to figure out who's who in that crowd.
And one of the things I thought was great about Mange is that you guys were just so powerful and had so much charisma that anybody that just wandered in, because I don't think I
in
really,
what way did we have charisma?
I just thought from the look,
because I think I understand what you mean, but I swear to God, I did not ever want to speak because everything that would come out of my mouth would just be so stupid. It's just I was not confident in anything that I said, so I just played.
And that was maybe part of your charm, is that
maybe.
I know that a band that I was friends with, the Snapdragons back in the day, the drummer did all that we call it chatter, the person that talked to the audience. So the guy that sang would just sing the songs, but then all the talking between songs was actually the drummer, and he was good. And some people are naturally good at banter. I guess banter may be better word than chatter. And
Christine was good at that. Our bassist, she was really good.
And I think it's one of
banter.
I'm good at podcasts and I can do a lot of things. I'm not good at banter like that, and so I think it's smart when you know that that's not what you're good at, and you just play. And I think. But
every time I talked, I tried to just keep it to a minimum. Hey, we're Mange, great to be here, and that's all. I know that's all you have to say, but
and I think that was
still
kind of part of your charm, is that that was authentically, you weren't trying to hey, we're Mange, and you were yourself, and you did what felt comfortable for you, and so that came through. And I just thought, there's these two kind of alt girls in the front, which you don't see many bands with women.
That was probably the number one thing that people would talk to us about. Oh, two girls up there! Wow.
And you guys both had kind of unique, funky
unique
rock look,
hip look, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. but also when you started playing, it wasn't soft. It was this really somewhat atonal, grungy,
exactly,
loud
lots of
thing.
Open chords. That was my favorite thing.
Yeah.
In that music, I could play a bunch of open chords and just really grunge them out, and it would sound really cool. Just kind of bad but good at the same time, and I love that.
So for anybody who doesn't know Melody, she's not a giant. I'm just gonna say she's just this cute little 5'2" girl with these really big glasses and real sweet face. And then but that's what was great, is that when this really loud, heavy sound came out of your guitar, that juxtaposition of it, and just even if I take away the visuals, just standing on the other side of the border there at Third Fridays, just hearing the music, it was powerful. Yeah, and it's something.
I really miss it. I really miss that.
Yeah, me too.
Practices were really cool. I would always feel good afterwards. Just my frustrations of the day, I would just get them out all
Yeah.
over that guitar.
And that's the kind of
So-
music that I've always liked, and it's something that
Yeah.
doesn't really happen too much around here.
No, it doesn't,
We
yeah.
have a little bit more of a singer-songwriter, more of a folksy rock kind of thing, which
Yeah.
is not to say if there's anything wrong with that, but I like the wall of sound, just loud.
We're trying to do that. Well, I'm trying to start 2 new bands right now, and hopefully Bedtime might have some of that wall of sound kind of stuff. My new band, Bedtime. I'll be playing bass for that, and so that's pretty new to me. And hopefully I'm trying to get back into that Mange kind of feel.
Yeah.
Bedtime's going to be different, but I'm trying to get back into the Mange feel with somebody else, and hopefully that comes along soon.
Yeah.
So it would be really nice.
It's
did.
yeah, absolutely, to get back to that thing, that the sound that you're.
Because we all have our sound, and I feel like
Yeah.
it took me a few years to figure it out,
Yeah.
and it took me like one band, playing. I played piano for my first band.
Right.
And, I felt trapped behind the piano.
Yeah.
So I grew to find my sound. And
With Mange, you definitely
with Mange, that was it.
found your sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that for me, I kind of I liked having a band that was kind of my sound, but then I also liked playing in another band with my friends that was kind of not what I would normally think that I would like to play. So it was good because it expanded
Yeah.
my horizons a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's great. And I always like the idea of being in a couple different bands, so that you had those different aspects of yourself. One where you're kind of driving right down the center of what you love, and one where
Yeah.
you're maybe being challenged and you bring elements of
That's
each band.
definitely Bedtime for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
But-
I think as a creative person, even like when we do the movies, sometimes I like to be the guy driving the bus, and sometimes I like to just be a passenger.
True,
And
yes.
learn from everybody else. And I don't think that I wouldn't want to be a passenger all the time, but sometimes it's nice to just sit back and just do a role and not worry about maybe the big picture. And
Yeah. It's good. It's exactly like that in music as
Yeah.
well.
and
But yeah.
Yeah, so we were kind of talking about the idea of being a musician full time for a living, what that would be like, and
Yeah.
there's something about even nostalgia for going on the road with a band, because even if it's just for a weekend or 4 or 5 days, your whole life when you do that is devoted to playing music.
Oh, yeah.
You're the whole reason why you're out in whatever city is to play that show at night, and
Yeah.
so there's something nice about dedicating every hour of the day to this thing that you love, and I
Yeah.
think that kind of gets lost on.
Yeah. I don't know where I heard this, but somewhere along the road of my life, I heard that the idea of the band, in quotes, has become lost. And I think that just, I don't really know what that means, but it's just, I kind of get it in a way.
Yeah.
Because like when you're touring, because I did tour for like a week with Mange, yeah, it's like your whole life is just the band.
Yeah.
And people know you as being this person in this band.
Yeah.
And everything you think of when you walk out the door, when you go to sleep at night, when you wake up and you eat food,
Yeah.
you're thinking about the band. And I don't know. I think it's a special thing. I would give anything to have that again, to feel
Yeah.
special in a single band.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something that means a lot to you.
And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about our conversation the other night, was that basic idea of just loving everything about it. Just
Yeah.
I mean,
Like nothing negative. Even if there are negative things, like the band will pull through.
Yeah.
Like it always pulls through. We always, oh well, he's just being. That's how he's
Yeah.
being. He's just like that, and then you get over it, and then you're still the band
Yeah.
afterwards. And
that
I don't
that that passion and and struggle of doing something that you really love, and then having to actually work hard at it, and
Yeah.
you're getting breakfast in Indianapolis at a table with the same 2 or 3 people, but it's because like, all right, usually the
Yeah.
conversation is about, does anybody know where the show is tonight, and what
Yeah.
do you think about how the show go last night or whatever, and just being immersed into one thing. We're so, especially nowadays, it's easy to get distracted by a bunch of different things.
And nowadays, like you can't really have that band mentality because it's hard to just have that full-time band experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you can maybe for a week, like when you're going out for a week on tour, and you can maybe for an evening, but I mean, everyone in a band nowadays can't, has a job, or maybe is in another band, or maybe, I don't know. It's hard to dedicate as much time, I feel like.
Yeah.
At least for me, that's what it is. And at least for me, I think I just need to dedicate more time to music, I guess.
You want to, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to totally immerse yourself in it, and I get what you're saying, because
I think that's what I'm getting at. Like, I just want that, I guess.
I can appreciate that. So I have a lot of friends actually around here that are in bands, and this is nothing against anybody, but I notice that a lot of times anymore when you're in a band, it's just an aspect of your life that you come and go back to occasionally, and we haven't practiced in a month, but maybe we'll book some shows. I don't know when we're playing out again. Where, like, I remember in the 90s, and specifically talking about Jay Timmons and John Dreyer, because we just had a little message right around New Year's. John pulled out some of our old tapes, because it was back in the day we used tapes. He goes, we had some pretty good songs. I'm like, yeah, we did. And I remember that like being at parties, and everybody, all of our friends are around, and we were sitting.
I'd like to hear some of those.
I'll have to get you some copies of my. I'll have to.
Sounds cool.
John, if you're listening, send me some of those Sciatic Boy tapes. Yes, I know it's a silly name, but all band names are silly until you learn to love
What was that
the
name again?
Sciatic Boy. I can't even pronounce it. It's been so long.
Cool.
But yeah, we'd be at a party, and the three of us would be sitting in a circle, talking about the band, and meanwhile the party's going on, and periodically somebody would come over and go, "You going to join the party?"
Oh, no,
and you're like, yeah. I go, "Yeah, I haven't talked to you in a while. I'll be over in a minute to hang out." And I mean, that would happen a lot when we were in that band, because it's like
an infatuation.
It was a good one though.
Like a healthy one though.
Yeah.
I mean, I had that with Mange, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think I had that with Mange, and it was really hard to lose that. It was kind of like losing a significant other. It was like breaking up.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that breaking up with somebody is like equivalent to someone dying in your life.
Yeah.
And it'll take approximately 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, to get over it.
Yeah.
Breaking up with somebody who's dear to you.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like now. I feel like I'm not fully over it.
Sure.
But it's okay, because like I'm moving on.
And if you do, and it's understandable, because if you do immerse yourself into a band the way that you did, it takes up so much of your time and attention that when it's gone, there's a big hole there, and it's also. There's this emotional relationship with the people in the band that when the band breaks up, that's over.
It's like I lost friends.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and even probably more so than friends.
Yeah.
Very intense friendships. I mean,
Yeah.
like I was saying, me and the guys.
We were the band. Like that was my idea of it.
And it becomes such a part of your identity too.
Yes.
So
it actually came to a point where I would just kind of. Especially in Wheeling, or if I went to a bar in Wheeling, I'd be like, I'm the girl from Mange or something, and someone would always see me or be like, I think I saw you at that show, and I saw you play. It was like natural. But then that's all gone, and
well, not it's not totally, because I know when I ran into you the other night, I'm like, oh, there's Melody from Mange. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah. Like,
I guess people, also know me.
But
it's
it's not as much fun when the band's not.
It's just like, oh, weren't you from Mange? And you're from Mange, right? And I would just be like, oh yeah.
Used to be.
Yeah. You can
I-
still hear our music on Bandcamp, but that's all.
Oh man, that's yeah.
You know.
In fact, we were in Alpha one night. A friend of mine and Christine was there, and I'm like, "Oh, Christine's here. I'm gonna give her and say hi." And they're like, "That's the girl from Mange. You know her?"
Yeah,
And I'm
right,
like,
yeah,
"Yeah."
yeah.
but and I even and really, you guys came out of the box like rock stars, and I guess when I say
That's why you called me a rock star that night.
I did,
I was
yeah.
like, wow.
but you guys did have that quality, and I don't know how to explain it, but there's certain people that have that charisma on
Yeah.
stage that either you have it or you don't. That I mean, I saw you guys play once, and after that, every time I'd see you guys, or even like something would come up on Facebook, I'm like, oh, that's
Oh, you remembered?
that's the
Yeah.
people from Mange, man. That's the girl from Mange, and I don't necessarily feel
Yeah.
that about all the other bands that I see, and that doesn't take anything away from them. But
Yeah.
there was something about, and
I appreciate that.
and I think that the reason why I got that feeling was that what you're saying about how immersed you were into it, that came through
Yeah.
in the music and in the show, that these were people up here that you could, without even ever talking about, that you could
Yeah.
kind of tell that they're very focused, like this is what they live for right now,
Yeah,
what they're doing.
I feel like, I think all three of us kind of felt that way. And
Yeah.
it was cool. I mean, towards the end, it was kind of noticeable that we were drifting.
Yeah.
But when we were in our prime, I guess it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is it. This is what we're doing. And we're awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
It's good.
absolutely.
We can feel confident about what we're doing. Is
Absolutely.
what I'm trying to say. We were confident
Yeah,
in each other.
It is. It's a great feeling to know that, like,
You know?
it kicks ass, and boy, like when you're in
Yeah.
the practice space and you're going,
I mean, granted, we never thought we were the best at anything ever.
Sure.
We just knew that we had something special, and that's all.
yeah,
And we really fed off of that with each other. We really
Yeah.
liked that.
That-
And worked.
that's a
I
great way
guess.
to put it too, because music is. There's really, it's an art, and art's not
Yeah.
good or bad.
And I'll never be the best guitar player ever. You know, I only know so much
Yeah.
at guitar, and
But the way you apply it
it's
is
just the three of us together. We made it all work.
yeah.
Yeah.
And really, I think in music and any kind of art, that's way more important than you can have some of the most technical players in the world all get together and make not that good at music, whereas the Ramones, they never really did become like virtuoso musicians, but Lord knows
Yeah.
they turned they changed
Something
a lot
about
of
the
lives.
Ramones was awesome. For some reason I have 2 of their shirts. I don't know. It's just like I love the Ramones.
Even
They're so weird.
had the Sex Pistols been better musicians, would they have
Yeah.
would have ruined the band? You know,
Right. Yeah, that's true as well.
The one thing that you do get when you're not so technically proficient is you really have to just play from your heart.
Yeah.
And
that's yeah.
Yeah, I do
Very
find
true.
that some of the people that I know that are the most technical musicians, we were kind of talking about that
Yes.
before the podcast, which I won't mention any names, but
Yeah.
fancy themselves as being very technically proficient, but had no charisma, I don't mean to be a
Yeah.
jackass, but just no energy, no emotion. It was all very sterile, and
Yeah,
it was
man.
almost like you fed the sheet music into a computer and it spit it back
Yeah.
out. And I like the mistakes. I like the humanity that comes when you kind of mess up just a little bit, or
Absolutely.
that's
That's part of the whole thing.
yeah,
Like,
digital
just
recording.
kind of raw and real. I don't know.
I
Like,
we're faced so much with non-human things now, even
Yeah.
communication over Facebook and all that we want that human feel to it. When they started recording music digitally, and so they would move the bass drum so that it was perfectly
Yeah.
on beat, and a lot of people, it kind of lost the feel where sometimes the drummer plays a little bit behind the beat and the computer will mess with that. Don't mess with
Right.
that. Like, I think
yeah, man. I think I believe in using, digital recording
Sure.
to a certain extent. It's always good, but never get rid of a certain little thing or a certain thing that makes that flair that
Yeah.
you want. Like, don't cut it out too much. Don't cut the raw out too much.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. You want to have the emotion of the person
Yeah.
and feel like it's a human being that's communicating something to you.
Yeah.
And that's where all the soul is really, and all
Especially with singing too. It's
Yeah.
like, or I don't know, anything. If you feel like maybe that one part could have been a little bit better, maybe just leave it. Because
Right.
it's kind of cool like that.
that. And sometimes as you go back and listen to it more and more, the part that you thought maybe was the best, that it's the part that you like the best, because there is a kind of
Exactly.
something.
Yeah.
I was listening to this band Doxy. Boy, I don't even know that hardly only maybe the person who loaned me the CD and I never gave it back to them back in the day has ever heard the band. But there's a couple places where he's really straining his voice when he's singing.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah,
It's
that's cool.
it's emotional. It's his voice cracks a little bit and he left it.
Yeah.
He was in
It's
the
a
moment.
human being
Yeah.
singing a song.
But it's
Since we're talking about this, one thing by Beck is his early album that really inspires me. It's probably inspired everyone by now, I'm sure. But Beck's early album, One Foot in the Grave,
Mhm.
and it's like those notes of reality, the rawness. It's all over that. I just love that.
And that is the thing that attracts you to it.
Yeah.
That you.
That's one of the reasons why I love that. I just love it.
And I can, and I also like some electronica that's very precise and I guess there's
me
a place
too,
in the
man.
world for that, right? That where it's very polished. And I really like the band Muse, and Lord knows they're like just ridiculously technical, and Radiohead.
There's something to be seen in that.
Yeah.
Like if you can own the digital world that
Yeah.
much, it's really cool.
It's funny because I don't know if you're familiar with the album OK Computer by Radiohead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so-
I recently listened to that earlier, a couple days ago.
There's it's such a
Yeah.
great album, and I think there's like 14 guitar tracks on
I think that's my favorite album.
yeah,
so
it's
far.
my favorite too. Yeah, I think Paranoid Android has like 14 guitar tracks, which is a lot. But
Dang.
it
that's crazy.
I can embrace the awesomeness of like the studio perfection of that album, because that's
Yeah.
what they really wanted to do. And
Yeah.
I guess the thing that I don't like in music and art is anytime somebody is trying to be something that they're not. Like if you really
yeah.
want to do like a really layered studio album, and that's what your intent is, and then you do it, that's great. But if you're doing a layered studio album because you think that that's what you have to do,
Yeah.
that's not so good. If in your heart you really would just rather
Yeah, that's not good.
jam out the songs, and so I know
Yeah.
that we went into a recording studio once, and really the first experience we had, and the guy that was recording us kind of took control of it, and the whole time I just kept saying, this doesn't feel right, but I didn't want to speak up, and I didn't want to speak
Oh,
up.
no,
and,
yeah.
and then you got the recordings back, and
Oh no, you can't do that.
yeah, they're terrible. And then I listened to the same songs that we recorded like in my basement with just a tape deck.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is how the song's supposed to sound. And
Right.
I really wanted to be like, this is what we should be giving to people, is
Exactly.
the basement version, because it's raw and it's us. And
That reminds me of whenever we were working on our next EP, we were like right in the middle of some really cool music.
Yeah.
I was super excited to release it, but we were talking about getting a better recording studio, maybe a little bit more expensive
Yeah.
person to go to, because we had recorded through Jonathan Porter, or JP, as pretty much everybody knows him by, JP.
yeah.
And I mean, he did a great job, and I mean, he wasn't perfect, but like that was perfect,
Yeah.
because that was great for our music, I think. And
Yeah. Finding that
know.
situation where it fits the band right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was kind of scared about going to a more expensive recording studio, because I didn't want to sound perfect. I feel like it would have been, we wouldn't sound the same.
Yeah, it
at
might have
all. It's
polished it up too much, or
Yeah.
lost that thing that, Guided by Voices, they're from Dayton, and as far as I know, every album they recorded, or most of them, they recorded at a record store in Columbus with one microphone, and then they know that the drums go over here, and I think they would go up on a Sunday when it was closed. And there's just one microphone in the room, and they would kind of set, and that's how they always recorded. And Lord knows people love their music, and so I think that they
didn't like the White Stripes do something like that.
I want to say that they did.
I don't know. I think I heard that they did something like that, but
it is interesting that there's so many.
Someone did. No, I'm sorry. Matt and Kim. They did something like that. You might not know Matt and Kim.
I don't.
They're really cool. They're another duo of a guy and a girl. So I don't know. I got them confused with the White Stripes. They're nowhere near the same music, but they did do that with one album. So anyway, that's not really relevant.
Oh no,
I just want to correct myself.
That's okay. The band Oasis, their very first album, they were very popular in England as a club band, and they got signed to a record deal, recorded a whole album, and they just kept going, this doesn't feel like us, and the manager's like, this doesn't feel like us, and they just, it doesn't capture what we do. And they made a decision to go back and re-record the whole album, and they left the big studio, and I think they rented a house on an island somewhere, and so they were all stuck on this island in the middle of a lake or something like that in England. And they really immersed themselves into it, and they found an engineer and a producer that kind of understood who they are, and it was such a bold move because the record company had spent so much money on recording a full album, and they mixed it down and everything, and it's like, this is not this is not us. I'm sure that the guitars were recorded well and everything, but it failed to capture them. And I thought and that first album by Oasis is one of my favorites. So I'm really glad that they went back and recorded it the way they did. And but they knew who they were. So I think if as any kind of artist, if you know who you are, you know when you've nailed it, and you know when you haven't.
Yeah.
And
do you know of any bands that you liked before that had that kind of raw, not like raw, but just they were themselves, and like maybe their first album, and
then they lost it.
Then they lost it. Do you have anybody like that?
Sure.
That you know of?
The Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins.
I thought that their first album was incredible, and I mean, I don't hate
that. I mean, in a way that it kind of changed them.
Yeah,
when they did. Sometimes like they can go that direction, and it's fine.
Yeah. When they did Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and they did this double album, and they had a lot of orchestration, and I felt like, I mean, maybe that's what they loved doing, but I felt like they lost the things about the band that I really loved.
Yeah.
The rawness and the energy, and I mean, I guess that does tend to happen. Boy, that's a good question, because I'm sure that there's.
Because I feel like some bands might have done that, and it was fine, but because there was one band that I absolutely fell in love with a few years back. They're called Two Door Cinema Club. They're relatively newer, I guess, but like their first album was not exactly raw, but it was definitely recorded in like maybe a friend's studio or something.
Right.
And then after because they kind of exploded in fame, basically. So like their second album was a lot more, studio. But then their most recent album was like crazy studio, and like they pretty much went a lot more pop.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I appreciate the way that they changed, but I can't tell you how much I miss going back and listening to that first album.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I really want them to say, hey, no, let's not do a studio thing this time. Let's just go,
get back to the roots.
Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, that would be one.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Man, those first two albums, I love them. They were raw and full energy, and then they were very unknown, really, at the time. They didn't really blow up till like maybe Mother's Milk back in the 90s.
Don't they have a very recent album?
They do, and I don't really know.
I didn't even really listen to it.
I don't think I've listened to.
I don't know.
I think after maybe Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which was back in the 90s. After that, I kind of lost touch with what they were doing, and I know that some people really love what they do now, and it's a tough thing for a fan and for a band that on one hand, you do the same thing for a while and you want to grow,
Yeah.
and you like to see a band evolve, and
Yeah.
on the other hand, when they evolve in a direction that you don't like, we mentioned Radiohead and how
Yeah.
OK Computer is our favorite,
Definitely.
and then they went and did a couple albums that weren't really did it for me, and then when they did In Rainbows, is it In Rainbows? Yeah, where they went this whole electronic thing, but it was good. It was
Yeah.
a totally different type of band, and I think probably the Beatles maybe messed up a lot of bands because they had this weird thing where they were just like the sugary 60s pop
Yeah, they
band.
did.
And then they evolved into like...
That's the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of my favorite bands kind of have that kind of quality.
Yeah.
In a way, like maybe one album is kind of constantly different than from the next.
Yeah.
Beck
But they're
does
still
that
good.
a lot. Beck has a ton of different kind of albums.
Yeah.
I mean, not really on the topic of studio-ness anymore, but just like the fact that it shows that you're a good musician or that you have a broad mind or something if you can change.
The album with the song Wave on it, I remember seeing him on Saturday Night Live,
Yeah.
and it was that I actually used that as the opening of my movie The Separator, because I love that song, and I'm sorry, Beck, I know I should have probably got permission, but I never made any money off the movie, but it was just such a slow, sad song from the guy that sang Loser, that
Yeah.
but the reason why I think it works for Beck is because it's all authentic. I don't think he was like, well, I think
Exactly.
I've been doing rap for a while. No, I think it's the audience knows when it's contrived or when it's, I think it's sometimes
Yeah,
they'll-
I think in a way, I'm sure this is what is happening, but he makes his own decisions
Yeah.
on which way he wants to go.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know anything about him, but you can tell that it's authentic because
Yeah.
you can tell in his music
yeah.
that he was ready to take that step because it was just another good album that's with one song after another that's really good.
And if it
least
comes
that's what
if
yeah.
it comes from the heart, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
gonna. That's what you're gonna get. Like I love that the Foo Fighters that they still use all the old tube amps and the analog equipment, and that's their vibe. And I know that probably a lot of other bands will do that because they think
Would you say the Foo Fighters?
the Foo Fighters.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they basically use technology from the 90s, and they like it, and they like the
Yeah.
feel of it, but they specifically, you could do it the hipster way where you're like, hey man, it's going to be cool really to do this, but you
Yeah.
don't really know why it's cool.
Yeah.
Whereas they understand that there's a certain warmth in the sound, and
Exactly,
they like
yeah.
the process. So two different bands could use the same equipment, but the reason why they're using it could be
Yeah. You
you
gotta
know,
have a reason to use it.
you gotta have it, yeah. And if you're doing it intentionally because you want a certain sound that you can only get from that equipment versus you just think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's same even with a painter that says, well, I only use horsehair brushes. Well, do you really, is there a quality to horsehair brushes that you like, or do you just want to use horsehair brushes because then you can say that you use horsehair brushes?
Yeah,
and,
really.
and maybe that's an odd example, but
No, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
um,
That's true. I will say that I'm kind of guilty of doing that with my guitar. Well, I guess not really, but when I wanted to get a new guitar, I kind of went straight for the Stratocaster
Yeah.
because all the bands that I love have a Stratocaster and I think it looks cool. So I wanted to get it. But then, it wasn't just that. Like, all the bands I liked for a reason. They had a good guitar sound.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get the Stratocaster because I know that it's going to sound good.
Well, and,
So-
and when you're new and you're just starting out, that's
Yeah.
really all you have to go on. If you were playing now, after you've
Exactly. That's all I had to go on. So.
yeah, after you've been playing for 15 years, maybe you'll have a very refined sense of what you want in a guitar.
Yeah,
and maybe it'll
right.
still be the Stratocaster, or maybe you'll start looking around.
Since then, I know a lot more about guitars, I think.
Yeah.
But, I still kind of choose the Stratocaster for that sound.
I don't think you can go wrong with the
Yeah.
Stratocaster or
I think that's
Les
what-
Paul, right?
It's true. You can't go wrong.
Yeah,
Anyway,
th-
so.
there's a reason why so many people still play those
Yeah.
guitars, and I know in the 80s a bunch of different guitar companies popped up around the heavy metal scene, like Charvel Jackson and Elektra, and you know they took out a lot of ads in the music magazines and sold a lot of guitars. And I mean, I'm not a guitar player, so I don't know how well they played, but they're not around anymore. You know, that was the thing, to have like a Charvel Jackson back in the '80s, and but the Fender Strat and the Les Paul haven't endured.
Yeah.
Because I guess they are the shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still around for a reason.
Yeah. It's an interesting story that you told me about how you were at a concert and when you decide that you want to be play in a band.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'll never forget that
day.
Yeah,
tell that story, because it's really great.
Well, I think I do forget the day. It was like, it was in October, but I forget the day.
And October,
anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, it was probably my freshman year of college, I would say. Like, it was like, I was just in a rut. I was like a hermit. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't know what I wanted out of life, kind of thing. I was still in marching band.
Nice.
I mean, marching band's cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I was in marching band too.
It just wasn't for me. Like, I was at a point where I was like, I am not dedicating my life to marching band. This is not what I want to do anymore. So, but yeah, it just happened at the right time. So it was Two Door Cinema Club concert in Columbus, and you know, everyone's probably had the same experience of a show, so everyone will know what I'm describing. But like, it was my first time at a show, pretty much ever, and it just really impacted me. The way I'll describe it is, it was like kind of like a dream where it just kind of went dark, and I was in a really good position. I was like kind of on a balcony that was kind of right in front of the stage, so I got to see everything. It was eye level. It was just dark, but then the music started to play in the darkness, you know, and the song started up with like maybe a guitar chiming or something, and all of a sudden you kind of see shadows walk onto the stage, and then there are white lights behind them, so they kind of just look like gods coming onto the stage, like these almighty beings coming onto the stage with this like really amazing peppy music that's inspiring, because all their music is completely inspiring, especially, I mean, well, that's one reason why I love them, but like their earlier music was really inspiring. It was just a really cool experience for me. Like when the lights were shining, I was just like, my heart was pumping, and I don't know, it was like I was in a dream for a second. And then the music would build up, and then it would just, the drums would like play, you know, a starting beat. Yeah. And then the song would just start, and the lights would go on, and it was like bright, and there were lights everywhere. And I just thought, wow,
it just struck
I've never
you.
seen anything like that before. And I was like thinking, I could be that. Well, I want to be that, is what I was thinking. Like, they're up there, and they're doing what they love for their full-time job. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Just, it was amazing to me. I don't know why I'm nervous right now. It's just like talking about.
It was a moving
I think
experience.
I need a beer.
We'll get one after this.
Yeah. It was an epiphany.
Yeah.
That's what I was describing.
That's why you're
I'm
feeling
flustered.
It right now.
Also, I can be anxious, so sorry.
and some people never have a me too. You saw me dropping things before the podcast. Definitely having an off day.
Oh, that was like the worst story. The worst way to tell that story.
No, it was good.
Sorry, everybody.
Hey, I started off the podcast talking about YouTube, and then I realized like 5 minutes into it that I hadn't even mentioned like Mange or anything, and so we never did go back to that. So I'm not the best podcaster.
You're cool.
But I love that story because, and at the time, did you play the guitar?
No, I didn't play. I mean, the only thing I played was saxophone and marching band.
Right.
That's it. Maybe a little piano. That's it.
I think that says a lot about you. The fact that you didn't even play guitar and you watched it and you're like, I want to do that, and then you went and did it.
I went and I did it because
How long after that did you buy a guitar?
Well, I didn't start with guitar. I was like, okay, well now I have to write my own music now.
Right.
Because that's the only way it's going to happen. I gotta write my own music. And I was like, okay, what can I write music on? I don't think I know anything. And then I thought about the piano lessons I took when I was a kid.
Right.
And I was like, I think I still know some piano. So I pulled some piano out of my ass just to make some music. So the first song I wrote was on piano. And it actually turned out kind of amazing. But it never went anywhere. I didn't put it with my first band or anything.
Right.
I just kind of kept it to myself. But yeah, I started on piano. And I just kind of knew enough chords.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew how to play chords on piano. And it was just kind of me banging chords, not really getting too interesting with the piano. But I just wanted to make song shapes. And I was like studying how to make songs, basically. So, yeah.
So
it's a new experience.
Teaching yourself, because we talked about that, but you taught yourself how to write songs.
Yeah.
And you were explaining like once you so you did that and then you played piano in a band for a while?
Yes. My first band was called Rivers.
Rivers.
I don't know if you know them, but Abby Merriman. Okay.
How long were you in that band?
I don't know if you know. I was not that long. I would say maybe a year and a half or something.
Okay.
Maybe a year. I don't know.
Now, at what point did you get your first guitar?
So, after that band kind of fell through, I realized I wanted to play guitar. I was like, yeah, this can't be that hard kind of thing. Like, I was just, because I already had an acoustic guitar, but I never did anything with it. I actually got that acoustic guitar my sophomore year of high school, but I never touched it. And it's amazing how that changed.
Right.
So I was like, well, I don't know. It can't be that hard. I mean, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard
But it's good that you thought that it can't be that hard because you would have never picked it up.
No.
If you would have thought that, this is too hard, I can never do it.
Yeah. I think Moore's Music Emporium is where I got my first guitar. It was $80.
Right.
Just some $80. I think it was Epoch or something. I think that's the brand name. I don't know.
A beginner's a
black beginner's guitar for $80, and it sounded fine.
Yeah.
It kind of had that interesting raw sound.
Yeah.
I kind of missed that sound in a way, but after I had my Stratocaster, I tried to pick up that guitar again, and I realized why I put it down because like the bridge it just needed like alignment or something. It just never tuned right. So like I couldn't. I had to keep that one as my first guitar, and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's better for nostalgia when you when you play a nicer guitar, you realize that.
Man.
See, with drums, there's the only thing with drums is either the mounts are bad and they keep falling over or something, or they're not. People would say, what kind of sticks do you play and what kind of drums do you use? And I'm like, man, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit picky about cymbals because I like them to sound good, but as far as the drums,
it's true. Greg was super picky about his drum set. It was so funny. Every time like we would think about just sharing a drum set, he would just be like, no, I'd rather not. Let's try not to.
Well, and that is funny. Like now, I did have a certain configuration of the way I set up my drums, which is not the way most people do. So that part, like I can kind of get like walking on stage and playing someone else's set.
Yeah, that would kind of be.
But as far as, I had so many drum pieces and sometimes for fun, we would trash a drum set. So I would get a garage sale drum set and cover it in like the most god awful contact paper from Walmart and throw it. Yeah, like I had one. It was sky blue with cups and saucers on it, and it was meant to line the shelves of like your kitchen. I had another one that was cow print.
Wait, so you wrapped your drum set?
Yeah, I'd take it all apart,
and
I'd wrap it with this sticky contact paper, and then put it all back together. And so I would completely recover them, but with like the cheapest material. It was maybe like $5 for it, and
Yeah.
it was meant to line a shelf, so it was never meant for a drum. So like really yellow plaid, or just like the most god awful thing that you would ever want to put on a drum
Sounds
set.
great.
It was awesome.
Actually.
It was awesome,
That
and
sounds wonderful.
And you play it for a couple shows, and
Yeah.
and I also kind of got over that. Like it didn't happen a lot, but I could sit in on other people's drums just because for a while there we were playing a lot, and so you would, if you played the songs enough and you practiced a lot and everything, you kind of get over that. But Greg was also a really specific drummer too, so I got mad respect for that guy. I could see why he would want his set the same way. But anyhow,
mean, if anyone deserves a certain set,
it's
he
Greg.
deserves to have.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. So you were saying that once you got a guitar, you were kind of telling me how you learned to write songs on the guitar.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of said, let me tell you it like this. So the first song I ever learned on guitar was not one of my own. It was like just an easy song, one of my favorite songs. Again, by Two Door Cinema Club, because that makes sense.
Right.
But it was an easy song, maybe 3 chords. And so I just learned how to play those 3 chords on guitar. And then I just played the chords with the song, and then bam, I know how to play a song now. And then I was just like, well, this doesn't seem too hard. So I tried to learn more songs. And once you learn songs from other people, you learn chords.
Right.
So now you have chords to write your own songs. So it was just, I started on basic chords, though, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, when you told me that story, I'm so glad that and one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on and talk about this, I think it's such a mellow way to approach songwriting, because I think people get so anxious, and just the idea of, I want to be in a band, but I don't know how to play an instrument, like all and you're just like, well, I'll just get a guitar, and you're just so mellow,
learn something.
just mellow about it, and like, well, it's not that big of a deal, and it really isn't. If you tensed up about it, you probably wouldn't have been able to write anything. You're like, it can't be that hard, and it really isn't. That
well, yeah, I mean,
it is,
it's
and it
not.
isn't.
It's the thing about it is, you as you grow, as you learn more chords, you realize, oh my God, there's actually a ton of different chords and ways to play, and then you're kind of embarrassed to think, well, damn, I wrote like 5 songs with just like some 5 basic chords that I.
But God, that worked for you.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, it did work.
Yeah.
It wasn't like till halfway through Mange, maybe. I don't know, maybe a few months through, we maybe only played maybe 1 or 2 shows.
Yeah.
We were just kind of starting writing stuff, that I realized how to play bar chords.
Right.
So I never knew how to play bar chords either for the longest time. So I was just kind of moving up on my own,
Right.
but making it work. So, and then I just kind of, I have a better understanding now of
Sometimes
things,
the bliss of not knowing how hard it is, or how much you don't know.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Ignorance was bliss for me, and
Yeah.
I was fine with that. If you're making a good song, I mean, I wasn't doing much at all, but like I had a band to back me up,
Yeah.
and we still made good songs.
Well,
but
yeah.
that wasn't for every Mange song. It was like,
Sure.
I evolved halfway through, so it was like.
I think that the biggest problem that a lot of people that want to do things is that they get so anxious, like, I can't do it. It's there's too much. They get overwhelmed with what, and they're looking at the people that are excellent at it and going, I can never
do that. Yeah.
And you took the total approach. You're like, it's like mellow, go into it. And
well, I will say, that whenever you're talking about how people who are very technical, think they're so good at music and stuff, and that's like. I was like the opposite. I thought the way you thought about people who kind of played technically like that, and that helped me write songs because I still kind of am to this day kind of against people who get so like flamboyantly technical with the guitar, because that doesn't mean it's a good song.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be in a good song, but that doesn't make a good song, So that helped me. That gave me confidence to say, yeah, all I need is, 2 chords. Fantasy. Mange's song Fantasy was just like 2 chords over and over and over again. But it was a good song.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. I literally only strummed 2 chords the whole time.
And that's all. And I just love that idea of.
So yeah.
I want to play in a band. I'm going to get a guitar. And
it comes from the heart, man.
It does come from the heart, and
you gotta, yeah.
And it also, I think, just that belief in yourself that I don't have. I think a lot of people. Well, I'm going to get a guitar, and then I think we even talked about this at Willing Brewing that I'm going to get a guitar, and then when I'm good enough, I'm going to get into a band, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
and when I'm good enough, and when everything is conditional on when this thing happens, and I love that spirit of.
I know a few people like that right now.
Most
kind of
people
refuse to get. I've asked one person specifically, because he's a really good songwriter.
Yeah.
He actually has like a single album that he recorded himself right now.
Yeah.
Dallas Wade. Just gonna give him some props right now.
Yo, Dallas.
Dallas Wade. Actually, he goes by Walnut. You can find his stuff on Bandcamp. But yeah, it's just. There's a lot of people out there who are kind of afraid to get into a band because they don't think they're good enough.
Yeah.
That might not be his reason. I maybe shouldn't be saying that, using him as an example, but it's true.
I think that's probably a lot of people that play music at home but never get into a band because they're afraid that they're not going to be good enough. I know when I started making movies, I had a little pocket camera and a window movie maker that came on Windows Vista.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all I had, and
right.
I couldn't find any scripts that I liked for free, and I couldn't find anybody to write one, so I just started writing one, and I had really no idea what I was getting into, but I did say, I said, well,
you have to try.
I'm going to try.
You have to start somewhere.
I'm going to make a movie, and whether it's a crappy movie or a good movie, I'm going to make a movie, and then the next one, I'm going to make a better one and a better one.
Yeah.
And always be trying to learn more. But if I wait until I'm good enough, and it's funny because I would go to these film festivals, and people that went to film school, and I'm like, so what movies have you made so far? Well, right now we're looking at funding. I got to get about $10K together so that we can.
Everything has to be perfect.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find a DP and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, that's cool, but I wrote the best script that I could, and I got the best camera that I could, and I found whoever would be willing to act, and I mean that was my way.
Yeah,
kind of very.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Jump in and figure it out on the way down.
You ever watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
You know how they started that whole thing?
It was like a YouTube thing or something, wasn't it?
Something like that.
It was just.
But you see their startup video, and it's shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not shit.
But it
it's
is.
Just it's just whatever they. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think it was like $200 or something.
Right.
I think that's what they said. It was like $200, put it all together.
Yeah.
And that's all you need, man.
That's all you need. If the desire to do it and just get started, and you don't have to have a Fender Stratocaster. You can have that $80 guitar. And I remember seeing a band in Dayton once. The guy had 2 drum sets that he combined together. They were they weren't.
Nice.
It was cool.
That's cool.
They were like high school kids. They're playing on a Tuesday night. There was nobody there. I think I stopped in to pick up our money from one of the shows.
Yeah.
And I watched these high school kids, and I thought they're probably 16, but at 16 they're playing at the club.
Yeah.
So by the time they're 18,
they're going
to be really good.
2 years can do a lot, especially if you keep up with something. Man.
And if they stick with it. And there was another band down in Athens when I was down there called Appalachian Death Ride.
Ooh.
And I saw their very first show, and there was a couple dudes that I'd seen around town. I didn't really know them that well. I don't even remember their names now, but because the band kind of happened right as I was leaving town. But I remember thinking I didn't even know they were musicians, and their drummer had a bass drum, and he was beating on it with a broken off broomstick. And, and it was just the silly. I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And then
works,
they
I don't know.
They stuck with it, you know. And they got either, I think they got a different drummer, like a really good formal drummer. And a couple years later, when I came back into town, they were the shit. They were the band that everybody wanted to see.
Nice.
And they were awesome.
Yeah.
And Appalachian Death Ride, y'all. And so they but they didn't wait till they were the band that everybody wanted to see. They got out on stage, and just went for it, and that was after.
That's a good story.
It's
Because, like, that's a story about how you don't let doubt or overthinking things too much distract you.
Right.
Because there might be other reasons to why Mange didn't work out, but that's a reason why we didn't work out.
Yeah.
Because we had doubts.
And it kills you. Yeah.
And negativity.
Right.
And it was not good. And it killed it.
Yeah.
So that's a good story because that just shows you how far you can come just by being positive
Absolutely.
and sticking with it, sticking together.
Even with this podcast, I when I started, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm not even going to think about it. I interviewed Stephen Moore, who I liked. He's a cool guy, and
Stephen Moore's not around anymore, though.
Yeah, he moved away. I miss him.
I really like the banjos.
And the canjos,
The canjos,
the
that's
canjos.
what they're called. I knew they were called something else. He
Yeah.
makes those.
And I just went to his house and set up the equipment, and I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but we're just going to do it. And I certainly thought that once I release these podcasts, that they'll probably get 5 downloads per episode, and maybe after a while I'll have 10 listeners, and then probably after a while it'll go back down to 5 because some of the original people have left, and that was kind of. But I don't care, and if I sound like an idiot, only 5 people are going to hear it, and really I don't really go back and listen to the first episodes, but I'm sure that there was a lot of stumbling, and I still stumble, and I'm.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's
Like,
okay. Yeah, that's my whole attitude. I'm like, so I started off. We talked about YouTube for 1 minute, and then we totally. I realized that was a bad place to start, but who cares?
That's fine.
We're having a good conversation.
That's a fine place to start.
Yeah,
but it's a conversation.
If I would have got caught up on like, oh no, I fucked up at the beginning, and then we would have had a terrible conversation. I just let it go. I'm like, the people that are listening, they may even appreciate the humanity and the mistakes, and and if they
of course, that's what we were just talking about too. We were just talking about you got to just be real and raw and just accept it.
Yeah, and be yourself. And I for a long time I got into painting when I quit like playing in bands, and I needed something to do.
Painting is cool, man.
It's so cool.
It's something I really want to get into, but I just don't want to spend the money on it.
I have so much painting shit at my house.
Cool,
I will loan you. I have canvases and canvas boards.
Sure, if you have some extras, man.
I have. Because I go all in on things. I go deep, and like when I was into painting, I just bought so much stuff, and because I just loved it, and I would go to the art store, and I'm like, oh. And so that's okay. It wasn't like it broke the bank, but I have tons of painting stuff, and I know that not really blessed with too much natural talent, a little bit, but I didn't care. I just thought nobody's going to see.
It's not about the talent.
It's not about the talent.
Is it? I don't know.
No,
it's about.
It can be, but I know that because
it's a different kind of talent.
It is, and
That's what.
I wasn't. There's a painting. We're at Center Market, by the way, and it's snowing outside, and we're sitting next to a painting that somebody did of Center Market, or maybe it's a charcoal. I thought.
Yeah, I think oil or charcoal.
It's very cool, but it's a level of realism that I still can't do.
No, there's no way I could do that.
And nor do I need to.
Yeah.
For me, the fact that if I was sitting there in front of a canvas painting something, it was successful because I'm painting, and
it's a different kind of talent. You're just expressing yourself as best you can.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Just express yourself the best you can. Just say, "Oh, I wish I could paint."
And if you're proud of it, then it's great.
Yeah, and
especially if it speaks to somebody else,
right?
In some way.
And I think a lot of any kind of art, whether it's making a movie or doing a podcast or painting or being in a band, enjoying the process of doing it is the part that, it's great when you get good feedback from the public, but I always told people, if you want to paint, unless you don't have any fingers that you can't hold a brush, and even then you could probably
paint.
You can paint. There's paint and a brush and something to paint on, and you can take house paint and a piece of wood, and that was always my.
Just cut yourself.
If you're painting something,
paint with blood.
Paint with blood.
Whatever you got.
I'm all for that. The kind of like you did with the guitar. The Presidents of the United States of America, I always thought it was hilarious. I don't know if you remember that band. They're from the 90s. They had a song called Lump, And
This sounds super interesting right now.
It's really,
I gotta go home and listen to that.
you do. And what was cool about it is that there was two guitar players and a drummer, and I think that the one guitar player only had 2 strings on his guitar, and the other one only had 3 strings on his guitar. And I think the band was started as a joke, and that's why they called themselves the Presidents of the United States of America. And it's that whole thing of just
That's
raw, like, I don't know if they ever progressed to, playing full 6-string guitars, but they literally did. They had a video they was on heavy rotation on MTV, and the guy's playing a regular guitar, but he's only got 2 strings on it.
It's missing strings. Oh my god.
Yeah, and that would
just kind of. I would be so messed up though.
Yeah,
I don't think I could do that.
I guess in a
That's
way, it
kinda
kind of frees
cool.
you up because you only have 2 strings to worry about. But just the idea, I just thought that was cool that they made that work. That
is really interesting that they made
kind
that
of
work.
the way Stephen Moore makes those canjos.
Yeah.
He brings them to life, and you think, God, he runs them through distortion.
Yeah.
And
Man, I remember the first time I saw him perform.
yeah.
He had such a crazy, interesting style. It was like bluesy, folky, but it was all run through distortion. It was so nothing else like that.
He'd have that little kick drum, and sometimes
He was. I guess the way you thought of Mange, that's kind of what I thought of him.
Yeah.
Just I would always love to see him.
he was a rock star too. Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely was a rock star.
And a really good guy.
Yeah, man.
But I'm glad that you're still thinking about playing music and that you've got hopes for the
Yeah.
future. And
I mean, you got to learn from your failures.
Yeah.
One of the best advices I've ever heard in my whole life was that it's better to fail at something that you love doing than to fail at something you hate doing.
yeah, that I think
Because
Jim Carrey said that about his father.
is that what it was?
It was. He was a
I feel like-
salesman,
yes.
and he always wanted to be a comedian. But he was like an insurance salesman, and
You
he
know
lost
what?
his.
That's exactly where
He lost his job as an
I just
insurance
watched
salesman.
that a couple days
Yeah,
ago.
and he lost his job as an insurance salesman, and he just remember thinking,
Yeah.
God, he's upset because he lost a job that he didn't even want. Like,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. Fail at something that you love, at least, and really, as long as you keep doing the thing that you love, you're not going to fail.
A failure, especially with something you love, it doesn't have to mean the end
No.
either.
Yeah.
It's just like a failure is just another step.
Yeah, it's a
You know?
learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really,
Learn.
especially in the arts, but anything that you do, if you really love it and you fail, you just look at it like, well, I learned not to do that again, and
Yeah.
you learn so much more from your failures anyhow. Like all the experience with Mange and kind of even what brought that band down, you're acutely aware of the next band that you're in. If things are going good, don't
Yeah.
you know not
man.
to fall into those traps. And
And I think one thing I took out of Mange as well is to learn, well, not only how to stand up for myself, but to not be so upset about, I mean, because a lot of things that happened when we were falling apart really upset me because
Yeah.
I was scared
yeah,
to lose that because
Sure.
it meant so much to me. But like now that I look back on it, because like I can tell you, I didn't act out on them, but I can definitely say that I did not say some things.
sure.
I'm just going to apologize to them right now.
Oh, good. Yeah.
on this podcast. But like, yeah, it's a learning experience.
It is, and
It helped me learn a lot about myself
sure.
as well, not just like the whole music thing either.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and because it was for you more than just music, and
Yeah.
and I think probably I know Greg and Christine, and they're good people, and I think they understand too that everybody was in a situation, things gets out of control, and
Yeah.
everybody was trying to handle the situation the best that they knew how, and in life
It's
that's
just that we all wanted it to be successful.
yeah,
But it was just a clash of personalities in
Yeah.
a way. And also, like, I guess, Christine and I were still young as well,
Yeah.
I think. I feel like if that were to happen now, I probably would have did something different.
Sure.
But also, I don't know.
Well,
you
and-
can't, it's in the past.
it is
know?
one of those things where success itself can be the thing that
Yeah.
you realize, then you start thinking, all right, how do we go to the next step? This could really be something, and then you overthink it, or
Yeah.
just the everybody wants to get to the same place, but they have different ideas of how to get there, and then that fear of it going away, or just the anxiousness of I want it to happen, like,
I was always kind of not that person in the band. I felt like maybe Christine and Greg were more that person in the band who were anxious to be better. And I was just really, I wasn't concerned with being better. I was concerned with being who we were.
Yeah.
And like
Staying true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, and I think that the biggest key to success in the long run is that just to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Like I wanted to move forward as well. I need to learn from that and say, well, it's okay to be yourself, but also you need to learn how to move forward and take advantage of more opportunities and stuff as well.
I think, there's that thing where it's almost like a chess game, or where you move forward in one direction and then you realize, this wasn't the right direction. Let's move back and figure it out. And so being flexible, being kind of open-minded to things, but also being able to say that's not working. And then there's the fine line between where certain moves really aren't for you, where you're moving in an inauthentic direction. And so all that gets really complicated, especially if your heart is.
It's like we were all trying to win at the chess game, but we all wanted to move a different piece. Or something.
Exactly.
That's what we were doing. I think
everybody had the same intention, and everybody wanted to do what but what one person would think is the best for the situation, the other person.
I think that's absolutely what went wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, in a broad sense.
Sure. And and then you realize, oh God, none of us really knows, because who knows what the path is?
No.
All of you could have been right. All of you could have been wrong. Probably a little bit of everything. But probably like what happened was the worst case scenario, that once the band breaks up, then nothing's going to happen. And
exactly.
Those are lessons that are hard.
In a way, you can't. Sometimes, maybe it just wouldn't have worked. Maybe it would have kind of been in that constant loop of just, which move do we take? And maybe it was time to end it. And maybe. I think it was. I think it was a good move. And I think it's just, I'm just going to be a better person afterwards.
Well, and the thing is, before you can, that almost had to end before you could go to the next thing, and any kind of relationship like that. And I think back of women that I dated when I was younger that it's
the same thing.
I didn't know how I would live without them, and now I look back and I go, God, if I would have been stuck with them.
Yep.
I don't know that nothing against them, but I don't think that the direction my life would have went in.
We were talking about this earlier about our relationships and
it's
like the point of being in a bad relationship and what makes it bad. And it really transcends into being in a band.
It really does, because it is it's a bunch of intense relationships between you, the other people.
Really intense.
Very intense, The group.
Again, the idea of
music.
the band.
And I'm glad that you came back to it, because I really love that there are still people out there that love the idea of a band, and that they see it as not just something that I do on the weekends or every now and then, but the idea that it really does become who you are and a part of your life, to where I really remember driving in my truck, always having the most recent practice tape in the tape deck.
I was very similar with that with Mange.
You guys are lucky to be able to have digital recording, I'm sure.
But man. That's how I wrote a lot of my songs. I would just open up my phone and hit record and sing something into it. And it'd be there. It was so easy.
And God, I wish we had that technology back in the day. I remember
I bet, man.
I'd be going over to practice or meeting with the guys, and so I'd be listening to a particular practice tape or whatever in my truck, and I'd stop it when it got to the part that was good, so that when I got into the house, it was already queued up, and I'd walk in the house, I'm like,
oh, nice.
Listen, remember we did this the other night when we were just goofing around.
Yeah.
This is awesome. We need to build on this, and I would a lot of time spent like riding around the car listening to stuff that we
Yeah.
recorded in my basement that sometimes wasn't even a song, just to see if there was
Yeah,
anything
that's
good there.
that whole thing
Oh,
about
that's awesome.
the band being in your head all day. And that's why I said that I
Yeah.
miss it, because with Mange, I really had that.
Yeah.
And I just hope that I get into another situation like that where I'm in a band where I'll be at work and I'll just be trying to think of a new song, because that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
I used
Yeah.
to just like be working and like be singing to myself or like trying to think of
Yeah.
a certain way that a song could go to make it a little bit better.
I
don't
can't.
know,
I
you
can't
know.
imagine that won't happen again for you. I mean, it's in your heart so much,
Yeah.
and so much of
And
who
even
you
if
are.
it's not with the band, I'm still trying to do solo stuff. So, yeah.
When the time is
But
right,
we'll
the
see
right
what happens.
situation will come along, and
Yeah.
we never did get back to the YouTube channel, but
Oh, yeah.
but
Well, it's not really anything. It's more of an idea at this moment.
yeah,
But it is something that I know I'm going to do.
yeah, yeah,
And I want more people to know about it right now, because
yeah.
it's just like this podcast.
Yeah.
It could be something that people would like to be on someday.
Yeah, and it's nice
So-
to have that diversity of things that you're involved in, so that you can
Yeah.
express other sides of who you are. God, this has been really great conversation. We've gone on for over an hour, which is
Oh, geez.
it just flew right by, didn't it?
Yeah.
God.
I was wondering how
Yes.
long it's been.
It's anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, I don't think so.
I think
I'm
we've had a good podcast, and I hope that you come on again and
Thank
we
you very
catch up
much.
on what else that you've been working on since today and everything. And
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast and coming back and listening to it after I took a couple months off and staying loyal. and every now and then I run into people when I'm out and they say nice things about it, which really makes me feel good. And
Yeah.
And Melody, thank you for coming on, and check her out. She's got some music on SoundCloud.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
SoundCloud. Miss Monday.
Miss Monday?
That's my solo thing right now.
That's her solo thing,
Yeah.
and you can still find Mange on Bandcamp.
Yes.
And stay tuned to the podcast, and check out the podcast page and Facebook for what Melody's going to be doing in the future.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Hey,
thank
so
you.
for Melody and myself, thanks for tuning into the podcast. Until the next time, see ya.
Bye.
Thanks.